When making a chord progression, how do you venture out of the scale without getting lost? The answer coming up. Hi, I'm Kate Harmony. Welcome to Q&A Tuesday on the Hack Music Theory Show, where we answer your questions in one sentence. Because if our answer is longer than that, then we're not doing a good job of conveying how simple music theory really is. Knut from the Electronic Music Hub of Tromsø in Norway emailed us with this question. I've spent some time analyzing an old track from the protégé called Out of Space. The first part of this track mainly consists of a chord progression and a synth riff. I've determined the chords used to be F major/A to D major/A to E major/B to D minor to E major. I think that the song is written in F major, Ionian. Now, on to my question. The D major and E major chords are outside of the scale, while the rest of the chords conform to it. I'm wondering if you have any tips for how you would approach breaking the rules in this way. Thank you, Knut. This is an advanced and awesome question, and you've made some wise observations already. So we're excited to connect the dots for you, starting with our one-sentence answer. Your chord progression can safely venture out of its scale by adding a non-diatonic chord, which is a chord that contains one or more notes from outside that scale, as long as that non-diatonic chord still contains at least one note from that scale. First, let's just solidify the terms diatonic and non-diatonic. Simply put, diatonic refers to notes that are in the scale, and non-diatonic refers to notes that are not in the scale. So, all the notes of a diatonic chord are in the scale, but one or more notes of a non-diatonic chord are out of the scale. By the way, non-diatonic notes are also referred to as chromatic notes, because the chromatic scale contains all 12 notes. Okay, let's get into the chord progression in your question now. We haven't had time to listen to the song and double check your analysis, so we'll just work with the information you've given us. Besides, using the exact chords in this example isn't important, as the lesson here is about non-diatonic chords, which you can then apply to any chord progression. So, you said the chord progression is in the key of F major, aka Ionian, which means the diatonic chords we can use are as follows: F major, G minor, A minor, B flat major, C major, D minor, and E diminished. Here's the chord progression you gave us. We've just added the root note of each chord below as reference, but these are not part of the chords. In this progression, F major is the 1, aka the root triad, so that's a diatonic chord. D major is the 6, but it's major instead of minor, so that's a non-diatonic chord. It creates tension as the third note in D major is F sharp, a non-diatonic note that clashes with our memory of F from the first chord, which is also the root note of the key. E major is the 7, but it's major instead of diminished, so that's also a non-diatonic chord. Whereas D major only contained one non-diatonic note, E major contains 2, G sharp instead of G, and B instead of B flat. So all in all, this chord progression makes use of 3 non-diatonic notes, which definitely blurs the line of a secure home. It makes the chord progression sound a bit wild, which is thrilling when done well. So, is this example done well? The short answer is yes and no. The best way to add non-diatonic chords to a chord progression is by using a common note from the diatonic chord into the non-diatonic chord, which smooths an otherwise abrupt change. That's what happens in the F major to D major, where the common note is A. Remember to always rearrange the notes so your common note is in the same place within both chords, which is exactly what happened here to get the F major / A to D major / A, where A is the bass note in both chords. Unfortunately though, this is the only chord change in this progression that actually flows well, and you can hear how the rest of it doesn't sound nearly as smooth as the first two chords. Remember, when you don't have a common note, you can make one using a sus chord. For more on this, please watch our chords video from Song 1. To conclude, we'll simplify this into two different types of non-diatonic chords. The first type is built from a root note that's in the scale, but one or more of the other notes in the chord are not in the scale. These non-diatonic chords tend to be sneakier to uncover, as at first glance they look like they're in the key. An example of this type would be the D major in this chord progression, as its root note, D, is in the scale, but its third note, F sharp, is not. The second type is built from a non-diatonic root note, and these chords are more obvious to see and hear, as they immediately stick out from the scale. In F Ionian, a non-diatonic chord of this type would be A flat major, which is instantly recognizable as a non-diatonic chord because its root note, A flat, should be an A. Even with an obvious non-diatonic chord like this, we can still make it fit smoothly into a chord progression using a common note, like C between F major and A flat major. Finally, here's a little chord progression we made, inspired by this example, but where each chord shares a common note with the next. The chords are F major / A to D major / A to E sus2 / B, resolving to E minor / B, to C sus2, resolving to C major, then C major / G. The root notes are muted below each chord for reference. This chord progression is definitely in the key of F major, even though half the chords are non-diatonic, i.e. the D major, E sus2, and E minor. As always, we added a little synth, bass, and drums for fun. Hope you enjoy. So that's our answer. Thanks for watching, and if you'd like more advanced hacks like this, please download our Hack Music Theory for Songwriting and Producing PDF. The link is below. Do you feel a little bit smarter now than you did a few minutes ago? Then like and hit subscribe so we can do it all again next week. And if you have a question that you'd like us to answer here on Q&A Tuesday, please comment below or connect with us on our website at revolutionharmony.com.